Hello, everybody. I believe we are live. My name is Nick Duarte. You are on the Fort Collins Museum of Discovery's Facebook or YouTube right now, watching Ask a Musician. My name is Nick Duarte. I am the music curator at the Fort Collins Museum of Discovery. I run the Music and Sound Lab there. Hopefully, you've come and visit and checked out some of the awesome stuff we have going on. Today, we're going to flip our program a little bit. Usually, it is Ask a Scientist, and this time we're going to be doing Ask a Musician. So, we're going to be talking to some local Northern Colorado musicians about what's going on, what everyone's doing during the pandemic, and how we can help where we go from there. So our first guest is Ms. Sarah Slaton. Thanks so much for being with us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your Northern Colorado musician history, please?
Hey, Nick. Thank you so much for having me. And hey, everybody that's tuning in. I appreciate you watching my Northern Colorado music history. Whew. A long and
Well,
windy
maybe
road.
maybe not all of it, but
Okay, well, it started. My love of Fort Collins first started when I began working with a nonprofit called Spokesbuzz, which was a really wonderful music nonprofit here in town that helped amplify the Northern Colorado music scene. I was their director of artist development. And when I worked with them, I would come up to Fort Collins each week for work. And I fell in love with the city. Then I started playing at Foco MX and went to New West Fest and got hooked. And then I moved up here in February of 2019. And I've been performing and helping support the Northern Colorado music community ever since.
and you were down in Denver for a long time before that, right? Edison and Vinefield Agency, all that fun stuff when we first met.
Yeah, I was in Denver from 2008 until February of 2019. And yes, we met when I was working at the Vinefield Agency, which was a small boutique booking agency that worked with artists from Colorado and a few bands from out of state.
Good stuff. Well, thanks for being with us today. And yeah, we're really just the music scene up here in Denver, Fort Collins in general. Like it's very. We've always been very tight knit. I mean, a long enough timeline. Everybody meets everybody. It's very supportive, very cooperative, which is fantastic. So again, thanks for doing this and this type of thing here. Hoping to get the larger community just a little more info about musicians in this area and what's going on. So could you give us just a little bit of a rundown of what you think, what the situation is for a musician in Denver and Fort Collins, Boulder, anywhere that with the shutdown, with everything that's going on, venues, the staffers. It's obviously so many industries have been thrown in disarray. But what are you seeing in terms of like what's going on right now?
Yeah, in my direct experience, obviously all of my shows were canceled whenever we went into shelter in place back in March. And everyone that is in my circle, in my network that are active musicians also had their shows or tours canceled. People were flying back to Colorado from different parts of the country or the world, trying to figure that out. So it's really hard because the summer, if you're a touring musician or someone who gigs a lot around here, the summer is really your bread and butter when you're making, at least for me and I think most musicians, a majority of your income for the year hits in those months between April and September. So to have this hit during that time, you're not only having a lack of your live show revenue, which is usually about 75% of your overall revenue as a musician, but you have all of those shows being canceled at the time of year when you're making money the most. And then, to go into the venues at the same time, particular venues make the most money in the summer. Certain venues are catered to that. Others more to like the fall. But you have everyone from the administrators, the folks that are running the venue, all the way to the sound engineers that are now out of jobs. And I used to work at like Coachella and a few big music festivals, and everyone I know in that world is also out of work. And they were about to have a summer full of big festivals to go and run production for. So it's all across the board, and it's all walks of life within the music industry, from musicians to stagehands to you name it. Everyone's kind of in a tight spot now.
Totally. So let's talk about the NoCo Live from Home show that you launched.
Yeah.
It was seamless. The shutdown happened on like a Wednesday for me, and that weekend we had a live stream going on, and you were just like so quick with that. Like, was this something you were
Thank you.
thinking about? Was it just something you'd seen done before? How did it come about?
No, I'm just crazy, Nick. No, I knew things. I've been keeping up with the news a lot, and before the week that we actually shut down, I think for a good 2 to 3 weeks there, I kind of had my finger on the pulse of what was going on, and I knew that a shutdown was imminent. So I knew there was a potential for all of our shows to be canceled, And with that in the back of my mind, that was just there. And then when it all started to happen, the day before the official shelter in place, I just kept seeing more and more people have shows canceled, and I felt really helpless in a way. And so I counteracted that by thinking of what we could do. And I thought, well, if we are going to be shutting down all of our shows, we could have a live stream. And if we each do live streams on our own page, we could only reach X amount. You know, if you have a couple thousand followers or a couple hundred. But if you create a page that's like an online music venue where every Saturday, 8 bands could play, and then it could act as like a kind of a concert hall online. So I kind of thought about that and got a hold of Michael Kirkpatrick, who's a musician with The Hollow. I'm sorry, The Holler.
Holler.
Did I say The Hollow? It's Spencer.
He's next. That's later
I
today.
can't stop thinking about Spencer. He's just so cute. But anyways, so I called Michael Kirkpatrick, and we got together and decided that we should launch the NoCo Live from Home show. And I'm used to running Facebook pages, so I just created one really quick and made some graphics and got a hold of some friends, including you, and we had a really great launch show with a bunch of bands, and it ended up happening for 12 weeks, and we booked about 92 bands.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Thanks for doing
Thank
that.
you.
I mean, honestly, it was and just speaking from personal experience. I mean, doing that live stream, and that was probably the biggest one that we've done, the first one we've done, but also the biggest we've done thus far as far as viewership. But it was, I think, the nicest thing was we did that little Zoom call after the thing was done with 6 or 7 of us on our phone just talking to the musicians, and it was so nice seeing everybody and just knowing. I mean, it's tough. We're all in this position. I haven't played a show in 4 months. An actual in-person thing since first week of March. It's crazy. So knowing that connecting all of us, everyone is we're all going through this together, and to various levels, obviously, of dependency on the live shows. But it's been wild, absolutely wild.
Yeah,
How are
I mean,
you?
it was a good way for the musicians to offset some of those losses. I mean, it in no way could compensate for the amount of money that was lost in canceled shows, but people were so generous, and anyone watching that tuned in to the NoCo Live from Home show or donated to any of the musicians directly, it was huge, and I've heard back from so many artists how much they were touched by that. So it was really huge, and we'll bring it back if it calls for it, but I paused the live stream just because it felt like a bit of a live stream burnout was happening, so I wanted to pause it and let people get outside for some of the safe shows that are happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to talk to a little bit of that? Speak to what I mean, the drive-in and things like that are going on.
Oh, for sure. Our friends over at Foco MX called me, and I helped out a little bit with the committee to help plan what's now called the Foco MX Drive and Jive, and it happens every Tuesday night at the Holiday Twin Drive-In in Fort Collins. And it's a way to socially distance and watch a show by being safe in your car and hearing the concert through your FM radio and watching it still on like the big jumbo drive-in theater screen, which was really fun. So yeah, that's been really fun to put together. We've had a great response, and it was something to get used to at first. I performed at the soundcheck show, and to kind of, I mean, it's one thing to perform on a live stream, and the iPhone doesn't clap, as you know, when you finish a song. But it's really cute to have like flashing headlights. But yeah,
Oh,
you
that's
also have to
awesome.
get used to not hearing, as much noise back, because you really feed off the energy of the crowd at a show in normal times. I mean, that's like, for an artist, that's what makes or breaks a show, I think, is what the crowd's giving you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Forrester from the band Right Minded works for us at the museum. He works in the Music and Sound Lab too, and he was talking about their show out there and how much fun they had. And I think the fun thing was talking to people that went to the show, because as a musician, it's like, oh, is this going to be, it's being, like you said, no one's clapping, you can't really hear the things. Well, how good is it going to be? But the response from the attendees, the people that were just like, oh my God, it was so good to see musicians again. And I mean, that's what this town is about. There's so much of that here, and it's a lot of people that moved here and stayed because we have all this arts and culture, and so it's so tough. Well, exactly how it goes.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think we're actually Post P is looking for a September date, so you heard it here first. We're trying
Ooh,
to get on board with that thing. What would you say the best way for fans to help and support and get involved with helping their favorite musicians would be at this time?
So at this point, Spotify and all the streaming stuff, that's great if you want to support there, but that's not where artists make money. That's pennies on the dollar. In context, you have to get a million spins to even get $8,000. You compare that to back in the day, if the only option for someone who loved a song was to get it on iTunes for 99 cents a song, the artist got 70% of that cut. So staggering number of difference there. So especially for a local band, the best way to support is to buy their albums directly, whether from their website or by Bandcamp. Follow them on social media, but also if they have a Patreon or some type of GoFundMe, Kickstarter, whatever their fundraising platform of choice may be, giving a few bucks here and there to the artists that you support is really helpful. I know some local bands like Wilderness and some others already have some Patreon. Is it Patreon or someone said Patreon to me, and I don't
I've
know.
always heard Patreon, yeah, but
And I feel like the hipster way is to say Patreon.
Patreon. Hmm.
It's tomato.
It's
But
Patreon. Hmm.
but anyways, donating directly to those that you love is always really cool. But a big thing you can do right now, because I think people don't know, some people don't know, that 90% of independent small venues are at risk of closing because a lot of them are not sure of how they're going to get support from Congress or the government to stay open or past this time because they were the first to close and they'll be the last to reopen, your small indoor venues and others. But you can visit saveourstages.com, and the National Independent Venue Association has made it very easy for you to send a letter to your representative and let them know that you would like our independent venues to be supported through federal funds.
Fantastic. I'm glad you brought that up. That's huge. I mean, it's easy to think about the musicians, especially because they're vocal and advertising themselves, but the venues are in a really tough spot right now. And not to mention, for a large summer season, all the crew that comes in, the production crew, the stage crew, this front of house, all these people that if they're not touring in the fall and things like that, they're located,
Mm-hmm.
in Colorado for the summer, and this is where they make money.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
been tough all around. Really, really crazy stuff.
Yeah, it's tough. And you think about the venues that, certain venues that are bringing in national bands, touring bands, when those contracts are done months ahead of time, like 6 months or more ahead of time, a deposit that's a certain amount of the guarantee is going to that artist. So these venues have put out tens of thousands of dollars of deposits that they just won't get back. And then the show's not happening, so they can't recoup on that money at all. So yeah, going to saveourstages.com is a huge help. And then obviously directly supporting local artists and just independent artists that you're a fan of. And when shows come back, getting out and going to a show and making sure that we keep the venues and the artists supported.
Yeah, definitely. So, what do you think it's going to look like in the future after this? I mean, obviously, I think Fort Collins will follow suit as soon as all the venues open back up and it's safe again and we have a vaccine, maybe. I don't know. But
Mm-hmm.
whatever when the safety is there and everyone's playing again and
Mm-hmm.
shows will be crazy and we'll probably get right back to how it was beforehand. I
Mm-hmm.
hope. What do you think? What are we looking like?
I mean, I think there's a lot of prongs in that answer, but I think a really big thing is what the landscape will look like as far as venues are concerned. Some of these beloved venues, I believe the Troubadour has already shut down in LA.
Yeah.
In this particular ecosystem in Fort Collins, I think we'll be just fine. I think the community is so supportive and it's a really special little bubble. It's like the Pleasantville of small music markets. It really is like, is this real?
Right, right,
Um,
right.
so Fort Collins will be fine. And it's really like a good way for other cities to maybe benchmark how they want to build their music ecosystems to sustain. Because I really do think that Fort Collins, of course, will come back out and be fine. But I do think that if you're a touring band at a small level, like my band Edison was, a lot of those 200 cap, 300 cap clubs around the country may not be open anymore. So there might be less venues, maybe just as many, if not more bands competing for shows, less venues. Um, Other parts of that, what will ticket sales look like? I think there might be some pent up demand. I do think that's true, but I also think that there might be some phobias correlated with small indoor shows that a lot of us thrive on. So I
Mhm.
think you might see some hesitation at first, but I do think things will pick up. But it might look different and it might be a bit more competitive. And I think that people are going to have to really figure out, regardless of live streaming shows or not, you have to really figure out what your voice is and how you get your voice out to people. And if anything, our revenue and our shows are taken away, but we're putting more time and effort, I think, into now connecting with our fans and engaging more and doing things, like this or my live stream series or the panel I did as well. I think those things are opportunities. So I think it'll look different, but I think that it'll be okay. But I do think it might be a little bit more tough for a
Yeah,
band getting out there on the road.
that's an interesting thing to talk about too, and I'll dive into it since we haven't had a question Facebook in a sec, but the everything's sort of moving to that point anyway. I mean, whether you have a Patreon, whether you have a, I mean, Facebook is less a social media thing than a marketing tool at this point. And I think that's, whether people understand that or not, but it's sort of, if you're going to be promoting on Facebook, well, you're paying for those ads. It's a way to get your marketing out there.
Mm-hmm.
And when we met with the label a couple of years ago that was almost trying to talk us out of playing shows, which was just, because that's what their business was, that was their thing. And obviously that wasn't what we're about. We were a live band, and that's the thing. But it's interesting how a lot of these artists can just be a solo person and just promote and get on their Spotify playlists or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think you're right. I mean, the landscape is going to be different. The venues are
Mm-hmm.
going to be, there's going to be fewer of them, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's going to be very, very interesting.
Well, and here's a question: if you're a musician, and if maybe this is a one-time thing, maybe not, but realizing that we weren't insulated at all from something like this, in ways that you can figure out some insulation or some way to offset live revenue, being so live revenue dependent, are things like Patreon, Patreon, or a Kickstarter or one of those services. But also, do you want to do online guitar lessons for someone? Or, my friend Jen Cordy, aka Lady Gang, who's a hustler among hustlers, is now starting like a kids show of sorts. It's like an online music school, to where if in the fall your kids are homeschooled and you want a music class for an hour, she's got one now. Built the curriculum, doing the whole thing. That's something she probably would have never been doing if COVID hadn't hit. But she's pivoting. She's moving with the river and the current, and I love that about her. So thinking how you can do that and what that looks like to people, for me, I'm going to be focusing on content releases and just being authentic and being true, because I think if you don't have heart in what you're doing right now or what you're releasing, then there's not really a point to it. So making sure that your message is really clear and what you're doing, but also I'm trying to focus on sync licensing opportunities, because mailbox money doesn't rely on me getting on stage. And mailbox money can come in the form of a great song, be it on a commercial or a TV show or a film, or you could maybe do a co-writing session with another artist and some action happens with that song, and you can co-write on Zoom. So there are opportunities right now. And in the future, I don't think you should stop doing them when this is over.
Totally. It's like a diversification. You've always
Mm-hmm.
needed to have a lot of different oars pushing the boat, basically. So we had a Facebook question here. What advice would you give a musician who wants to do their first live stream?
Oh, cool. First live stream, that's awesome. That's great. I did my first live stream just through my iPhone and playing through my actual PA. That was in my room. And I would say the advice I would give to someone else doing it would be just take the time to kind of figure out your video and audio before you do that first live stream, so that it is a really enticing presentation that they're getting, especially given the influx of all the people doing live streams right now. You really want to stand out and make sure that you look pro. So looking into different things, like I use Ecamm Live. They have a free trial version, but that way you can stream to different sites but have a little bit more control of your setup. I also use an interface when I'm streaming live. Here I've got a Scarlett, and that's connected to a mixer over there. So my audio I can actually plug in myself, and when I'm live streaming, have my guitar and my bandmates' keys and their vocal. So yeah, that's something I didn't do the first couple live streams, and I finally did it whenever I felt like I needed to level up compared to all my friends. So and my friend Matt Fink was so kind to lend me and Sergio all this stuff. But yeah, I think if you do have the ability to get some extra things as far as audio and video are concerned, that'd be good. And then also making sure that you give a little time to promote the live stream, maybe make a Facebook event for it, build it kind of into a thing like you would a show. Don't just go live right then without telling people about it a few days before or getting a little buzz going on about it.
Yeah, it seems like that's a thing to get out ahead of it, for sure, with the advertising, because it's so easy to, well, it's happening on Facebook. People will just know when it's happening on Facebook, but
Mm-hmm.
there's just so much that can happen,
Mm-hmm.
if you, I mean, just like any show, just
Yep.
making sure people set aside the time. And yeah, remember, I mean, the first live stream we did, it was like take an iPhone, set it down there, and play the
Yeah.
acoustic in front of the thing, and hope it all goes all right. But you're right. Now I mean, these are every weekend, and everybody's
Mm-hmm.
doing them. I mean, Death Cab for Cutie's doing them. All this stuff. I'm watching those things. So
Always.
you're like, all right, I got to step it up. I
Mm-hmm.
gotta make sure we're doing it here.
Totally. And I feel like always making sure that you do a sound check, because you can broadcast. If you're going live on Facebook, you can always broadcast just to yourself. There's other things now like StreamYard and some really cool places to get it done in a more efficient way. But if you are just going to to go live from anywhere, make sure you do a sound check and stream just to yourself to check those levels. Because I also didn't do that the first time, and you don't want to hear things be all messed up in the mix after you play back.
Yeah, no kidding. That's the worst, to find out my Wi-Fi died halfway through or something, and
Mm-hmm.
didn't get there. Connection coming to my area town soon. And we did have a question. We've kind of already touched on this, but the best way fans can support musicians during this time. Again, we were just talking about if they have Patreons and those types of things, or going to people's merch pages right now are huge. I know I have boxes of CDs and T-shirts and hoodies and great stuff sitting in a garage because not a lot of shows to go do that. So, especially if there's local people, make sure to go to your local bands, pages, their Facebook pages, things like that, and engage, and let everybody know you're thinking of them. It goes a long way. Let's see. So you're talking about you had a lot of content or working on content during the downtime, and that's been a mixed bag for a lot of people. I feel like how has the inspiration been with this time?
I had none for months. I had none. One, it was like the song kind of was like a little baby nug that became a little infant and finally is a toddler walking now. But it happened like over months where like one night I just found like a guitar part that I liked and voice memoed it. And then another night, my partner added keys and I had like some ooze. Always starts with the ooze,
Oh yeah.
Gotta have those ooze. So, but then, I sat on it for a couple months because I just didn't, I don't know. It's like there's so much going on. It's almost like too much to, it's not even so. And like, what's the point of writing about anything else? It seems very like, a bit shallow. So, but I was having a bit of a identity crisis within COVID happening, and also within a few other variables in my life. And so the song kind of came naturally, just one night with the lyrics and stuff. And I just felt really strong about it. So now I'm going to go in the studio to do it. But it's not like a political song or not like a coronavirus song by any means. But it's more about just like feeling hard and a little bit like not feeling like yourself, with things being so heavy, and just trying to shake off that, and just trying to tell yourself that you got to get up and move with the river.
No kidding. No, I think that's been anybody I've talked to, my friends, from that aren't playing, obviously. It's just been, what's there's. I don't want people beating themselves up for using this downtime as actual downtime, because it took me a little while to get to that point. I mean, we released a record in November, and then it was like, okay, we had 3 months worth of shows over the holidays, which are always kind of hit or miss anyway. And then it's like, we're shut down, and so I'm not in a creative mode. And same thing. It's like no one that I've talked to has had any sort of inspiration around this. And, no one seems to want to write about a COVID
Yeah.
thing. It's just like you said, it's like you've got to kind of feel it. And if no one's really feeling anything right now, it's just kind of a tough spot to be.
I somehow ended up with one lyric about, I think it says something about the world being locked down, but I hope that's not too dramatic. But I do it like in this rappy kind of way, which doesn't sound like it makes sense. But
everything's a metaphor for everything else anyway, so it's
right?
fun. So we have a Facebook question. What's your favorite memory of music in Fort Collins?
There's so many. That's a good question. That's a really great question.
That's tough.
My mind. I'll go with the first memory because that feels right. Hodie's Half Note, 10 p.m. set at Foco MX with my band Edison. It was sold out, and there was a line to get in, and we had a bunch of guest musicians playing with us, and we had a really fun set. And I just remember the night, like the excitement of Foco MX, and like seeing all of my friends play and just bands I admired play all over downtown Fort Collins, and then going to Hodie's, which is a venue I really admire, and getting on stage at a really coveted slot time I felt like we didn't deserve, and getting a 10 p.m. slot at Hodie's and having it be packed when there were so many other bands they could be watching at that time. Man, I get all emotional even thinking about it. That was really touching. That was like the really great night in Fort Collins where I was like, holy crap, like this city, what's going on? It was awesome.
Yeah. My very first Foco MX was quite the experience. It was just one of those, you meet so many people and so many great bands, and people come up to see you, and we had, it was our 6th show or something like that. We hadn't even really been playing for that long. It really is one of those things that obviously I've missed this year. It's
Yeah.
like our Fort Collins holiday for musicians, you know.
I know. I keep telling my partner, I'm like, I'm just having withdrawals from summer camp. But that's the best way I can put it. I'm like, yes, it's like shows, but it's like you really get immersed in the music scene, and you're just reminded of like how much is going on. Because the rest of the year, everyone's focused on their own kind of career and agenda and stuff. But then when you get into this like Foco MX mode, it's like family. I just want to like, what cabin are you in? Do you want to go to
Totally.
dinner together?
It's like a stressful weekend, but in the best way. You know, you put
Yeah.
more miles on your shoes than
Yep.
than any
I
other
mean, you and I
weekend.
have both handled South by Southwest, so I feel like we can
Yeah,
handle anything at this point.
fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. Uh, oh, hey, Kelsey. Kelsey Shira from
Hello, Kelsey.
Hody's said hello.
Hello. We love
Another
hoodies.
one of those staff people at the venues that we're thinking about in all this downtime.
Yeah, I believe I think we shared it on NoCo Live from Home Show's Facebook page, but there are, I believe, some local resources how you can support local staff. If anyone has a link, they can put in the comments. I
I
can
know
forward it through
Hody's
to
had one
Doug.
for sure, right?
I believe they did. And as always, Focal Max does help with the, I believe it's the Fort Collins Musicians Relief Fund, which is also happening. And again, saveourstages.com is a way that you can actually reach out to your representative and help Congress take action in supporting the venues.
I love that. And Mishawaka is doing some shows as well right now.
Yeah, I just sang there last Saturday, actually.
Right on. How was
I
that?
guess it was awesome. It was really, I mean, it's different, obviously. It's like it was beautiful, although the river and I guessing with kind dub,
Oh
but they
God,
had tables that were
amazing.
very well thought out, and their spacing really safe space from each other, really far apart. But they had tables around the place where the crowd usually stands, and then up where the restaurant deck patio seating is, they had a few tables up there. But compared to 1,100 people normally, I don't know what the capacity was. It couldn't have been 100. I mean, not many people, but
Yeah.
you only sit at a table with the people you're comfortable with. So it was really great to be up there. I really commend the Mish for the way that they did it. They're like on top of all their stuff,
Oh yeah, always.
very much so. So I'm really happy they've got stuff going on in the drive-in, and at the Lyrics doing stuff as well.
Hmm.
But all those indoor venues definitely need support. And I think musicians out there are starting to do more house shows, from what I've seen. And my friend Michael Kirkpatrick does his weekly live stream.
Yeah. And tell me, did you see much about the? I didn't go out for the Fourth of July. We were still
Me either.
kind of being quarantined and doing our thing, but I know they were doing those little pop-up shows
Hmm.
randomly, and I didn't actually talk to anyone about how that went afterwards. I don't know if you
I have no
saw it.
idea.
Yeah.
I've been a hermit crab,
Yeah.
unless
Yeah.
I've gone to a couple of those very safely socially distanced events. I basically stay at home and hang out with my puppy.
Yeah. We've been the same way. It's us and the cats. Just.
Just me and the cats.
That's right. The kitties.
Just
All
always
right.
working on my Patreon. Um,
Patreon.
yeah, we'll
We
figure
have
it
a
out.
we have a question. Sorry. During this time, is it easier to be in a band with group support or a solo artist when you can play
Hmm.
whenever you want?
Yeah, I feel like it would be easier to be a solo artist right now. Think about the Burrows. I'm like, how do you guys rehearse? That is a lot of people.
No
Um,
kidding.
versus like kind of, which is two people. I think it's easier for a solo artist right now, but mentally it's probably easier for a band because you have that support system more so in place, and a solo artist is kind of already on their own to navigate their career, and now on their own to navigate a pause in their career and no revenue. So I'm lucky enough to live with my partner that I play music with, so we get to
Me too.
yeah, we're in the same boat. Yeah, so my love and I play music together, so that's actually been really good for us, because sometimes after a really hard day, we just want to jam and hang out, and the music doesn't have any intention. You're just trying to release some energy. So that's really like a plus for me. But if I was solo and without my partner like it used to be, I might be going a little mad right now.
Yeah, I think luckily Amy and I can just do the acoustic live streams from the house and not have to worry about anything. And
Mm-hmm.
we'd have to go do a backyard thing or a garage or whatever with Brian and Ed if we're going to do that kind of thing. I don't know. I think you're totally right. It really would be you get the camaraderie of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just logistically it's easier
Mm-hmm.
just to set up an iPhone and go for
Yeah,
it.
right. And I think for musicians watching, don't feel a pressure to do a live stream. I mean, just because it's happening with a lot of people, like figure out like what's right for you. Like I think a really cool example, if I could share it really quick, is
Please.
Pronoun. Pronoun's an artist that my former band Edison was on a record label with, and she's a brilliant marketer as well. Works for the Orchard for her day job, so knows her stuff. And she is into Animal Crossing, and her a lot of her fans are too. So she released a single at some point during all of this that was already planned for release, I think, pre-COVID. So they just went ahead with the rollout, and she like made a meet and greet on Animal Crossing, and then people could come to that meet and greet she built on Animal Crossing, and all of her fans came and could hear the single, and there was like a billboard in the game, and got photos with her and could share the photos they got with Pronoun, and it was like all over Twitter, and I'm like, you're a
That's
genius.
crazy.
You just had a brilliant online digital meet and greet with and like a ton of fans showed up, and there was a line to meet you in Animal Crossing. I'm like, that's what's up. Like, figure out what works for you and what your fans are looking for, and capitalize on it if you can.
Absolutely. Love that. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for your time. If you don't mind hanging out, we'll probably have you back on maybe towards the end here, but we're going to bring on Mr. Spencer Hughes to talk about some Music Minds Matter.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Nick. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Always a pleasure, Sarah. Thank you so much for being part of this. Oh, here he is. Here he is. The man, the myth.
Boo, 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 boo.
Mr. Spencer, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
You're looking good, I'll tell you that.
Hey, feeling great.
Got the stash. It's fantastic.
And I'll tell you what, quarantine has made me super weird. Weirder, maybe.
So why don't you give the viewers at home a little background about yourself and maybe some Music Minds Matter, if you don't mind.
Sure, of course. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This is a wonderful little thing that you put together, and Sarah is a gem, and I'm very fortunate to share this space with her and with you, so thank you for having me. My name is Spencer Townsend Hughes. I play music locally in a band called The Hollow. I play guitar and sing for them. We've been together for about 4 years, but 2 years ago, I co-founded an organization called Music Minds Matter with my very good friend Angela Whaley. And it's an organization that is geared towards providing musicians and members of the music community with mental wellness resources. We believe that it's a very underserved community when it comes to mental wellness. And so it kind of came to be when I outreached a group on Facebook, the Denver music scene page. I outreached them and said, hey, I've been really struggling with like why I'm a musician, and we're getting ready to release this record, and I don't know if anybody's going to listen to it or if anybody's going to come, blah, blah, blah. Is there anybody, like, do we have a group of people that can get together and chat about their struggles? And the first comment was, no, but you should totally start that. So we've been hosting those mental wellness meetups for 2 years now. As of April 14th of this year, Music Minds Matter is an official 501c3 nonprofit, which is very exciting.
That's awesome. Congrats.
Thank you very much. And since COVID happened, we've been hosting digital virtual meetups every Monday from 6 to 7 Mountain Standard Time, just because life is strange and outrageous. Yeah, it's outrageous right now. So yeah, dabbling a little bit in music and dabbling a little bit in helping people as best I can.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
and again, thank you for being here with us. Yeah, the Music Minds Matter thing is it's interesting to me that it seems like it's coming. Working at the museum, we're working on a traveling exhibit right now too, called Minds Matter, or Mind Matters. Sorry. So this was kind of amazing that all these things, but it just seems like there's just this, obviously before pandemic and everything else that was happening at the beginning of this year. Let's say in February, it was amazing how everything was sort of coming together in this mental health conversation, and it was awesome to have you as a friend and a colleague with all this, because this is something that, I was going to want to have this conversation regardless of what was going on. Obviously, COVID has compounded the situation, the plight of the musician. How's it been going? Have there been more people showing up to the meetups? Has it been more, I don't know.
Yeah, more active, I suppose. Yeah. I don't know. It's regardless of the situation, mental wellness is always a hot topic. It's something that people don't necessarily want to talk about at all. So the pandemic really didn't really move people to like towards the meetups in the way that we kind of thought. But I suppose that's on us for having those expectations of like, oh, well, we need to launch this virtual meetup now because people are going to need it more than ever. The idea is that regardless of the pandemic or not, people are they're constantly struggling with mental wellness. I mean, it's just a fact.
Mm-hmm.
The stigma around mental health and mental wellness is that if you talk about it, then you're showing weakness, right? So it doesn't matter if there's a pandemic. It doesn't matter if it's a Tuesday. People have a hesitation or a reservation to chat about their mental unwellness. So essentially what we're trying to do with Music Minds Matter and the Mental Wellness Meetup is we're trying to promote the platform as a safe space for people to come and chat about it. And I think we're seeing some of the fruits of our labor. I think by us being vulnerable, it's encouraging other people to kind of put the shield down a little bit. I'm happy to say that we have a lot of new people coming to our meetups while also having like recurring members come.
Awesome.
So they're finding a safe space, confiding in us. Friendships are being built. Community is being built. And to us, that's the most important thing. Without the community, you can't have a music community. You know.
Totally. Well, and I remember I went to one of the first ones up in Fort Collins last year. I guess probably early last year, and it was fantastic. You know, it's just it's really. I don't hide my struggles with mental health, and I've seen a therapist over the last few years just because of all the craziness of before COVID being a musician. I mean, this is not an easy gig. It's not an easy thing. I have a day job, that I can rely on and a steady paycheck and all these things. And I have a lot of friends that don't have that. And even then it's something that, like Sarah was talking about, just identity things and all this, the industry is shifting too. So there's a lot of that. The changes keeping up with everything that's going on. And then it's so easy to feel like, well, I didn't do a live stream, so people don't remember me anymore, and those types of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very important, and it's really good that you saw that post on the Denver page and said, yeah. I am going to do that.
Well, and I will say that I've appreciated our conversations. I mean, you and I have had several conversations in depth because a lot of people who start to have the conversations feel like they're the only ones who are dealing with it. And the reason that they don't talk about it is because they don't want to be like looked upon as like, that weakness or that vulnerability. But when you brought it up, I said, man, I was having the exact same feelings at the exact same time.
Yeah.
And now we're having a 4-hour conversation about like the release of the record and the merry-go-round of members of the band and things of this nature.
Yeah.
You're not alone. And that's something that we try to promote often through the meetup and through Music Minds Matter.
That's fantastic. So we have a Facebook question. What mental health tips do you have for musicians in this time?
OMG, so many. I think what you and Sarah were talking about earlier about the kind of shame or the expectation of feeling like you need to be producing right now. I'm in the same boat as Sarah. I could not find any motivation to pick up my guitar or write any music whatsoever. But you see everybody else who's doing it. So there's this I should be doing this. I should be doing this. Angela and I say this often where it's like, don't should yourself. Because that's just setting up expectations. That's comparing yourself to other people. Man, self-care is number one. Like, get exercise. Get as much sunlight as you can. Read books. Like, I could not be more grateful for that pause. I'm one of the musicians who is like thankful that the music universe shut down for a while. Like, I felt the burnout, and I felt the burnout from other people on a massive scale. So I think this little, inhale was needed. But yeah, taking care of yourself is absolutely paramount. And
I've been leaning into that a lot in this time. I can't see it as a good thing. You know what I mean? Obviously, the
Of course.
merry-go-round needs to keep going because so many people need their jobs and things. But for me, it was I was feeling the burnout as well in a lot of ways. And I don't know if it's I just don't know. I don't know what that
Yep.
was from. I have so many questions. But as I start ruminating on those things, that's when I find myself seeping into the because it's always about personal. It's like, what didn't
Right.
I do? What shouldn't I have done? Why am I wrong? Why am I bad
Sure.
at this? And then I realize that that's my self care. Is I have to not do that to myself. You know?
Absolutely. And as Sarah mentioned, Jen, Lady Gang, was making her living off of that. You and I both have other jobs. Like, we are fortunate enough that during the pandemic, we had essential jobs. So really, my daily routine didn't change that much. But for people who were dedicated to the industry, and not just the music industry, but there's like trade shows, carps, and like people who set up stages, the entire like theater community has completely been obliterated.
Yeah.
Those people were living their lives off of those paychecks. And so I try to stay in the mindset of, yes, I wasn't affected, but I'm super sympathetic to everybody. I was in that industry for a very long time, and so I definitely know that there are people who are struggling, and so we also want to be there for them as well.
Yeah. So we have a question from our friend Kelsey from Hodies.
Yes.
Some people have a stigma against therapy. How can we help our struggling friends open up?
Kelsey, you're so sweet. I hope you don't mind saying that she's been to a few of our meetups as well, and it's so wonderful to have people from the music community in different aspects of the scene come together, because we're all affected by it. So Kelsey, thank you so much. You're wonderful. Um, how can we help our struggling friends open up? Oftentimes, we can share as much advice as we want. Although I would say that if you're not really a licensed professional, that sharing advice is probably not the best idea. But sharing stories in which you've gone through something similar and how you dealt with it, that's not always terrible. But I would say that all we can do is like offer the rope. You can't make somebody grab onto it and then help them up, right? So I do a mental wellness Monday check-in every Monday on social media, where I just ask my community, like, how are you? I usually ask about successes and challenges. I ask them, we do a stoplight check-in where it's green, yellow, or red. And if you're green, you feel great. Yellow means you're on the fence, and red's like, you're lucky I showed up today kind of thing. But I have found through those weekly check-ins that it actually, whether the person participates or not, it helps them with just checking in with themselves. So whether they're commenting on the post or if they send me a message personally, they'll come back around 2 weeks later and be like, I really appreciate that you're doing this. And so I think we can help our friends open up by normalizing the conversation. Sharing on your Facebook that, like, hey, I'm not doing really well today, or like, hey, this happened, and normally I would feel weird about celebrating this, but this is great. And so I feel great about myself today. By normalizing the conversation is how we help people break the stigma and invite them in to have the more difficult conversations about mental wellness.
And I've seen those. I replied to those posts you've done quite a few times, and it's nice seeing. I mean, there's 85, 100 comments by the end of the day, more, and it's really nice to see because it's not just like it's a one-to-one. Someone sending you a message. This is like I'm having a great day, or someone saying I'm really struggling today, and then other comments come in. So I want to say I'm having a little issue with social media anyway, in general at the moment. But it's really nice. You're using it for good rather than evil. This is a thing that really is bringing people together, and
Certainly trying to, man. And I
yeah,
think too, my favorite part about that post is I'll have complete strangers commenting on each other's posts about their, if they're yellow or if they're red. I have friends that have no idea who this other friend is. They've never met before. And now they're exchanging, conversation and well wishes. And that to me is how we build that trust in that community. Because
yeah,
things are really heavy right now. It's undeniable. We're living in unprecedented times with the pandemic and with the Black Lives Matter movement and with the border situation that is still a situation, which is absolutely blowing my mind. But there's so much going on. And I make this reference often in the meetup, is when the oxygen mask falls from the airplane, cabin, you have to put yours on before you help anybody else with theirs. So I know there's a ton of empaths in the scene. I also know that there's a ton of sociopaths like myself. But it's so important that we take care of ourselves before we outreach and try to start taking care of everybody else's problems, because we won't survive. We won't do it. Okay. So once we start with that self-care and once we start feeling comfortable with ourselves, that's when we can start opening up. And that's what I've loved seeing out of that string of posts through Facebook and Instagram, for sure.
Yeah, it's about survival right now. This is not, I'm not expecting to thrive in this time. I'm expecting to, I'm not eating out, so I'm saving a little bit of money, hopefully, and, hope I have a job for the foreseeable future, and, right. And that all my friends are healthy and stay good. I mean, this is just, that's the first thing when you get out of bed, it's like, it's absolutely insane. And then you're supposed to go out there and be successful. And that's just it's a lot of pressure to put.
I mean, it's taking us back to the basics. I mean, so many things that we've taken for granted. Going to see your friends play live music on weekends or weeknights. Like, yeah. That was something that we were able to do, and we didn't do it sometimes. Hey, I've got a show on Friday if you're not doing anything. Oh, I'm actually not doing anything, but I'm probably still not going to go to your show, right? Like, and now we would kill to go to that. But now it's starting, something you and Sarah were talking about like live streaming and shows and like promoting your band. We're playing the Drive-In Jive on Tuesday.
This week, next week.
Yeah, which is very exciting, but we have kind of taken a stance on like not necessarily promoting the show because there's so much going on that we don't want to take attention away. We're trying to be respectful. We want to do our best for the Fort Collins community and for Greta and for Foco MX, and of course, the Drive-In, Holiday Twin. But at the same time, we haven't been very vocal on social media about the movement, and so it feels unauthentic to post about our shows and like, hey, look at me, when there's so much going on. And
I'm glad you touched on that, because that is a tough thing too. I mean, we took a step back from live streams unofficially, because in some ways it was like, Amy's still doing lessons. All of her cello lessons switched over to Zoom, which is fantastic. And like we talked about, I have a day job. There are people out there that do not, and that would. It's like there's no way for me to tell in my little microcosm of Facebook, if I'm taking fans from the other things that's happening on that Thursday night or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. But it was something that was in our head. It's just like, maybe we shouldn't take this bandwidth away from the people that really need this for the donations and to keep that livelihood going.
Absolutely. But
that's a tough place to be.
But I would also recommend, so I was asked to do a live stream. I forget what, I've only done one, because also what Sarah was saying was like, yeah, you get an interface, you got to do a sound check. I did the same thing she did, where I was just like my MacBook, microphone, and my PA in my van. Yeah. And I was so stressed out. It was just me.
Did you get the dry mouth where you're just like, I'm so nervous, nervous?
Oh, it was ridiculous. And so I was like, I showed up for this one. Chances are I'm not going to do another one, But like what I did, they were asking us for our like Venmo handles and our PayPal handles, and I actually gave them Jen's from Lady Gang. I was like, Jen is a full-time musician. She, like, if you're going to donate any money, donate it to her. I'm fine. All things considered, I realized that I won the genetic lottery by being born a white man, and I still have my job. Like, I'm fine. I'm gonna be fine.
And I will say too, I don't know, the things you get from Venmo, like we did get a couple of donations, and the nicest part of getting a Venmo thing
it was like the little comment that they get to leave, right?
The comments were fantastic. That was better for me than then I mean, it's like, here's $5, here's what I would have paid for a show, and just thanks so much for doing these things, and we really need this, and that kind of stuff really. And I just wasn't. I didn't see that coming.
I,
That was fantastic.
I will say that as musicians, we get so caught up in our own minds and our own brains about like, that live stream sounded awful. I'm never going to do this again. It was so stressful. But then those notes where it's like, hey, dingus, don't make it about you. I'm a fan who wants to see you play. And I'm like, oh, you never think about the people in which you're doing this for. And so
Yeah.
it really is a balance, man. It is trying to figure out what you want and what's going to make you happy and fulfill you and your art. And then also being mindful of the people who don't get to go to shows. Like, we had people who were going to every show that we played, and now they're not seeing any shows, and now they're not seeing us live stream. So I'm sure that that pot is starting to boil over too. And so to be mindful of them as well is really important.
And there's just, they're at risk right now, and it's I have to remind myself that maybe I don't want to. I don't think I'm doing good with the live stream, and this is going for any musicians out there that are watching right now that might be thinking, well, I haven't done one, and I'm not. It's people do want to hear you. They want to hear music. They want to hear something new, something different. And if you're doing it, and even if you only have your iPhone, whatever, try that first with an acoustic. Go do the sound check, see how it goes. It's gonna. I haven't felt better in quarantine since probably after those types of things. It's like, I'm so glad I did that sort of thing.
And even that small, even if it's like a small outcome or a small gathering of people who are watching you, that feeling is still very profound. And I also think that it challenges us musicians. Like, we've always been creative. So now, if everyone is live streaming, what can we do that's going to set us apart? We're always trying to move forward with whatever the norm is. So, like, for example, the Drive and Drive show that's coming up on Tuesday with the Hollow and the Velveteers, we are hosting like an event, and it's going to be a movie night. And we're encouraging people who are participating or who are going to come to the show to dress up as their favorite movie characters. And then we're going to have a costume contest.
I should have known.
And we're hoping to get a DeLorean and a Ghostbuster mobile there so that we can take pictures with like the cars,
That's fantastic. Absolutely amazing.
So it's like, this is what we're trying to do, man, is we're just trying to constantly push the ball forward, knowing that everybody's live streaming all the time. It's like, well, let's not just add to the noise, let's separate from it and do something else. So there's an interesting challenge there for other people on the live streaming front, for sure.
Yeah. So going back to a question we had a little while ago, do you think the music scene will look different post-COVID? And granted, that's a big bag.
Oh, yeah. No, my answer is I hope so, on a massive level. During this pandemic, people have turned to music and the arts more than they ever have ever before, ever in the history of time, ever. People are listening to more music. People are hungry for the live streams. Hamilton came out on Disney Plus, on the 4th of July weekend, and people are flocking to it. In times of struggle and peril, people rely on the arts. And now, as you and Sarah were talking about, the music venues are struggling to stay open, and there's no real recourse to keep them open, which means there has been no forethought about protecting some of these places. Now, granted, I would say that there's probably a little bit of ownership on management of, maybe not necessarily planning for a pandemic, but certainly being ready for it.
I think with margins just,
and
tighter and tighter and tighter.
And also in an economy like Denver, and like cost of living and everything being up so high, and
that's a good point.
It's devastating to see. And so I'm hoping that the music scene changes for the better. Of course, like, who would wish for it to change for the worse?
Sure.
But I think, and certainly with the mental wellness, I think that we have an opportunity to grow as not only like a Denver music community or Fort Collins music community, but as a Colorado music community, and as music community members from wherever you are. We're all struggling together. We have an opportunity to like forego all of the ego battles and like ticket sales and the garbage, and we have an opportunity to talk to each other and be human with each other and really start supporting each other. And that's when we start seeing more musicians at other people's shows, supporting other musicians.
And that's when the magic happens. You know,
That's when the magic
the
happens, man.
scene that's how the scene gets going. I mean,
But
that's the way we broke into anything, was going to every single show we
absolutely.
could.
But then I'm thinking that like we start breaking genres down. So like the Hollow's not just going to start going to Post Paradise shows, but now we're going to start going to hip hop shows, man. We're going to start going to as many diverse shows. Like we've been pinpointing so hard for so long, and we've kind of been taught that. And I won't say that I've been I'm like arrogant. I certainly have a lot of that blame put on myself, but that just means we're going to open doors to go support as many people as we can. And you know, with the diverse music community that we have in Colorado, we have a lot of options to go support people of color, Black artists, women. We have massive opportunities to do that.
I'm thinking about the youth musicians right now. You know, I know how I was when I was 16. As soon as I found out that this was something that could be done and I could be playing music with my friends, and you know, that was how many 2 decades ago, and I never looked back. I mean, it's just this. I feel so grateful that I've had the opportunities that I've had in my music career, you know, and then I have, you know, the teenager working for me at the museum right now who's in 4 different bands and is just like devastated because I had all these shows and all these things and this record I was going to be releasing and all this stuff, and the first big release they were doing, you know, and I'm just, and this is why I hope that when everything opens back up, that we do have, like you're talking about, that community, that everyone is just, all right, we got to get back on track, everybody. How are we going to do it, you know?
You're absolutely right. Our youth artists are probably struggling the most. Although I will say that Gen Z is one of the most like fascinating and like
They're going to figure it out.
admirable. Oh my days. Something's going to happen. I mean, they went from eating Tide Pods to like
I think Tide Pod, that was millennials. That was us. That was we were the Tide Pods, I think. Yeah.
That must be the Tide Pods talking then. But they went from like, they trumped Trump at that route. It was just, I can't wait. I can't wait to see what this. There's a resilience in Gen Z that I'm so excited for. But also, those young artists need mentors. I wish that I would have been in the scene when I was 16. I was playing music, certainly, and I was so influenced. Like, think about when you're 13, 14, 15, and you're listening to, like, music for the first time, and you're falling in love with art for the first time. I think that you are the most impressionable at that age. And so they need artists like you, like me, like Sarah. They need artists, mentors, to say like, hey, this is like, no one has gone through this, but we will get through this together.
Absolutely.
Being encouraging, telling them to press on. It's always darkest before the dawn, but I truly think that like we do have an opportunity to come out of this together, and in bigger groups and bigger formations. And I'm really looking forward to that.
And let's since we're getting close to time, I want to pull on that thread, because that we're going to do it together. You know, no one is in this alone, in mental health, in professional music, in even when you go to play a show, you know, it's not just you getting up on stage, you're the star, you're in charge of that stage. No, there's a sound guy there, there's a stage crew, there's probably a monitor guy, there's the promoter, there's the person at the front door taking them, you know, the show doesn't happen without all that stuff, all those people, all that staff, everything that goes into doing that. So it's really important to remember that it is cooperative, it is collaborative, and we'll be back. We'll be back again, you know.
Absolutely.
And younger musicians need to rely on us, and you know, they're going to change things. It really is. It's getting to be. I'm feeling it. You know, it's to that point. Like that's what's gonna happen, and it's time. We need some change, and we need some fresh ideas, some fresh blood.
The vibe is there. I'm nervous and I'm excited about it. I'm also realizing my role, as I mentioned before, as a white man in a band. It's not an original story. So really sitting back and using my privilege to help promote the youth artists, Black artists, people of color, women, anyone that I can, to help diversify. And that's not only on the stage, but as you mentioned, like let's start mixing up what talent buyers are looking. It's a lot.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of. It's a white male dominated industry when it comes to that. You know, booking people up on. Corey Hazel wrote an amazing article on 303 Magazine about this. We just need to mix it up, and it's about time. We have a lot to learn, and I cannot wait. I'll be there with a pad and a number 2 pencil ready to go. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and we're in such a great, it's such a great time to do it, and we're such a great place to do it too. I mean, Bohemian Nights, New West Fest has been, pounding that drum of trying to get female fronted bands for, a decade now, more. Folk OMX is everything. I mean, you can see so many different genres, so many different walks of life, Native American artists. It's so cool.
Oh, definitely.
And then shut down.
Yeah, but great. Like,
yeah. We're on our way.
It's well on our way. Bonnie Raitt was probably the best thing ever. And just a quick note, Nick, I know you asked Sarah what her favorite NoCo memory was.
Yeah.
And mine was, or you asked her to share her history about like her Northern Colorado music history. And I was like, mine started with you at Odie's when you had us come
up. Was it really?
Yeah, that was the first time
we
ever.
Yeah.
It was the first time we ever played Fort Collins.
We sold that out.
We sold that out.
That was, yeah.
Amy put together the best theme for a show ever, where everyone dressed up as you in the flannel and the hat. I grew up, my beard was like super long, but I feel like I trimmed it down, so I try to look like you as much as possible. I couldn't pull off the handsome, but I think I pulled off the shirt and the hat at least. So that was.
That's probably one of my favorite memories of Fort Collins too, and I've been here 14 years now or something crazy. But this is what I'm talking about. This is the thing of I can't say I've made a lot of money at music, but the friends I've met and the times I've had and the things I've been able to tell the next generation on the way up. I mean, it's just like warms my heart. The memories and the stuff that's still the good times that are still to be had.
Absolutely.
I really, really look forward to whatever's next. We're going to do it.
That so much, man. And I would just say this in closing too: if anyone is looking to participate in any of our mental wellness meetups, or just to learn a little bit more about who Music Matter, like what Music Matters is and who we are, you can visit www.musicmindsmatter.org. Like I said, my friend Angela and I co-founded this thing just a little while ago, and the response has been incredible. We teach mental health first aid. So we're able to certify members of the music community in mental health first aid. We'd love to hear from you. Please, we have a contact page on there. Reach out, just say hi. We really appreciate you guys very much. This has been great, Nick. I really do appreciate you inviting me to do this. This is awesome.
No, thank you so much. And thanks to Ben, who's our control person right now. Can you bring Sarah back into the convo too, so we can do a big goodbye with everybody?
Please bring her back.
Oh. Yeah, Sarah, thank you so much.
My darling.
I just don't worry. I sanitized.
Sorry, everybody watching at home. This is just what we do. You put a couple of musicians in a virtual room, and we'll still find ways to kill time and just have fun. But Sarah, Spencer, thank you all so much for this. Fantastic. Always appreciate your time. Thank you for what you're doing. You guys took, in your own ways, you took some ideas that the community needed, the musician community needed, and the larger community needs musicians. So everybody needed this, but you took it, you ran with it. And good things are happening. So really appreciate you sharing the stories. And this is why this place is so good, and why I have faith for the next, whenever we open back up again.
The
it's
next
gonna be
normal
great.
Is what we're trying to call it. The next And huge shout out to Ben and Sierra and your entire team, man, for making this thing happen.
I
absolutely.
second that.
Love what you guys are doing.
We've got a great team over here, and good things are happening. So we'll see you at the drive-in on Tuesday, Spencer. And Sarah, good luck in the studio at the end of the month.
Are you going to join us for a song, dude? Bring your own microphone. Sing Open Letter to Kim K with us, dude. Get up there.
No, that would actually be... I live like a half mile away from the drive-in, so I literally could cruise down and hop on stage. I mean, spaced away. I'll do 12 feet away just to so no one's...
No, get a wireless mic and then just walk in front of all the cars, you know what I mean?
Oh, there we go. All right. Well, thank you guys again so much. And everyone watching, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the questions. Definitely appreciate everyone tuning in. We do these kinds of things all the time. I'm not sure the date of the next one, but we do Ask a Scientist. So we'll be doing, we've had geologists, we've had climatologists, all kinds of crazy stuff. Always a good time. So thank you again from Fort Collins Museum of Discovery. We'll see you next time.